All right, so Isaiah 41:10 is where we're going to start. Isaiah 41:10. This is a verse that we were looking at last week. I'll continue to look at it. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee, yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness." All right, so there were several good phrases that we had in that verse there. To fear not, to not be dismayed. God is our God. He is with us. He will strengthen us. He will help us. He will uphold us. And as we continue to progress through Moses here, we're going to see more and more of this verse. That's what happened there. That's what happened there, right? Last week we talked about how God's plan marches on. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Joshua, etc., all the way on down the line, right? So God's plan all the way to the end in Revelation, that will keep marching on. He will use different people at different times. And when one leader dies off the scene, another one will arise because his plan is going to continue, right? We also learned that how spiritual growth and spiritual affliction go together. Right? And we learned from Revelation 12:12, and that's because that the devil knows that his time is short. And so he's going to try and take out as many of us as he can. We also learned then how we can combat that, right, in James chapter 4. James chapter 4, verse 8. "Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded." Right? So that's our option. We have the option to either draw nigh to God, that we talked about last week, or we can draw back from God, we can retreat, and then we're going to get picked off. Right? So that's where we left off last week. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 23 is where we will start this week. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 23, as we continue with Moses. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 23 says, "By faith Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment." Right? We learned that Moses' parents, Amram and Jochebed, both were of the tribe of Levi. Right? We talked about how their inheritance is the Lord himself. Right? They ended up hiding Moses 3 months. They were not afraid of the king's commandment, the king being Pharaoh, right? Why were they not afraid? Should they have been afraid? Randy? Faith, right? They had faith, right? Being of the tribe of Levi, they know some things coming up. But they trusted. Right? They trusted in God at that point. Okay? If we take a look at the corresponding verses in Exodus to our Hebrews 11 verse. Genesis, Exodus chapter 2. We'll see the same account there where he was hid of his parents. Exodus chapter 2. Verses 3 and 4, 2, 3, and 4. "And the woman conceived and bare a son, and when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months." And that's what we just read in Acts. "And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink." Now, what's interesting there is there's an interesting word in there. It's a 3-letter word in there. Who can tell me what that interesting word is? What? Nope. That is an interesting word, I guess, just because we came out of Noah. But there's a different word that we're going to focus on. It starts with an S. No. Rhymes with he. Yeah, there you go, she. Right? It shows up several times in that verse. Right? And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. What does that tell you? Okay, God was working through her. Peter? Okay, so God was working through her, not through Isaiah 41:10. All right. What else? God will use male or female, right? What else? Okay, she was trusting God to protect him. So what balance do we strike between the she and the trusting God part? Randy.
I like the fact that she just goes out and the child can live no matter what I do. She had to hide it, and she had to put bulrushes. There's a little bit of a general reality where you're doing, while you're also having faith in God.
Right? So she has a part to play in this, right? She has a role. She has a part. There's something she's supposed to do, right? When God gives us something to do, right? When God gives her something to do, she did all that she could, right? She prepared as much as she could. She got an ark of the bulrushes and then did what? Why? Right, otherwise it'd be at the bottom. So she waterproofed it, right? She sealed it. Okay, so she did her part. What else did she do? Put it in the water. Where? Right at the brink, at the edge. Why? Well, think about where she put it. It's in the bulrushes. What does that mean? What are bulrushes? Flags, reeds. What are those things? They're plants, right? They're kind of hidden, right? They're also secured, right? So secured, hidden, all these things, right? Oftentimes in the videos or whatever, we'll see, baby Moses floating down the river, right? He's not, right? She put him in a place where he'd be safe on purpose, okay? So she did her part there. How does that correspond to Isaiah 41:10? What's the Lord doing here? Guiding and directing, right? What else? Okay, strengthen her belief. IEF. Strengthen her belief. What else? Right? It's funny that we've become accustomed to this account. We've heard this story so many times that we're missing key factors to this. Right? Think about what she had to do. She's disobeying the king, but what else? She's giving up her child. How many of you would do that? Randy says if he had to save its life, right? How hard do you think that is, though, Randy? Incredibly hard, right? So this is not only faith that's being strengthened, but her emotionally, right? Right? her emotionally. I will strengthen thee. I will uphold thee. Right? So you got to think about Peter. Go ahead.
I would say shows overall the design of God. Women are much attached to children.
Sure.
They're very small. Father's outside doing the work and everything else, supporting the family. She's right there with the kid.
Yeah.
Very connected.
Very connected, very bonded with the king or with the kid. And now you got to go ahead. How do you think she felt getting that ark and waterproofing that? Knowing what she's going to have to do in a half hour once that dries. Right? You wouldn't doubt that at all. And then to have to take that kid out, not only smuggle him out there so nobody knows, put it in the water, and then walk away. Right? Put it in the water and then walk away. We can kind of flip that around a little bit, and we can get a glimpse of what God the Father did with Christ on the cross. Right? Because God put the Son there. That's the plan. God put the Son there, and then he had to turn his back on the Son. Right? We can think about that in human terms and how we would deal with that emotionally with family that we've got. Right? God the Father, the same thing. Right? And Christ is crying out then, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Right? Moses is in the river when the Pharaoh's daughter comes and takes the cap off the ark. What happens? Baby cries. Right? Right? Same thing kind of going on there, right? So when she could no longer hide Moses, she took an ark, she waterproofed it, she laid it in the flags, she hid it in an area where it would kind of be secure. But in Isaiah 41:10, God is also helping her. Right? How is he helping her? Where did she put the ark? Right? It's in the flags, it's in the reeds, it's not in fast-moving water. Right? In verse 4 it says, and his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. Now, what's interesting is how did the sister get there? You know, did the mom tell the sister to be there? Or is this one of those sisters that's got to know everything? You know, I don't know. We all have those kids. They got to know everything before it happens, like a year in advance. Right? I don't have any of those kids. Don't know where they get it from. Right? So she's standing there watching. But what happens in 5? What happens in verse 5? Pharaoh's daughter finds him. Well, how does Pharaoh's daughter find him? Right? She came down to the river to wash herself. So what kind of area in the river is this? What do you think of when you hear the River Nile, Clint? What's in it? What do you think of right away? Crocodiles. Crocodiles. He guesses crocodiles. Now, that's the first thing that pops in your head, right? Big teeth, chompy things, right? Crocodiles, right? But where did Moses get put? Huh? Right, a bathing area. What does that mean? Why is it a bathing area? Because it's safe, right? It's safer. I don't know if you've seen this, but what they will often do is we'll take, big logs, I guess, and we'll stick them in the mud vertically in an area around a beach or a bathing area or where you get your drinking water from. And theoretically, that is to keep big things from that area, right? Does it always work? I mean, no. But that's what they'll do to try and create a safe area for bathing, for getting drinking water, for dropping your kid off to get picked up by Pharaoh's daughter. You know, one of those kinds of things. Okay? Rick, you had your hand up?
Doesn't really say that
must have been like a little bitty marsh or something by the
Yeah.
river, because it must have been wet, because she
Right.
made it, but
Yeah, it's not the river like we think the river is when you see the movies or the videos, and there's Moses cruising down the river, and it's not like that.
then we see too that she's watching that thing, she's watching Pharaoh's daughter come down and find it. She doesn't just leave it there. She leaves it there, but she's got.
The sister's watching. The sister's watching. So yeah, there's somebody supervising on purpose, or it could be. That's a heavy burden though to put on a daughter though, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to leave because I can't handle this. You watch and you tell me what happens, right? No, she's probably not that old, right? Maybe 6, 8 tops. That's the kind of burden you want to put on an 8-year-old? Wow, right? Okay, so she stood watching there. So you're thinking of crocodiles, but Pharaoh's daughter is coming down to wash there. Is Pharaoh's going to let his family bathe in an area that's not safe? Not a chance, right? Not a chance, all right? So, very good. So, as we look at verse 6 then, chapter 2, verse 6. Let's read 5 anyway. Starting in verse 5. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him, and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Right? So there's an interesting phrase in there. Well, there's a couple interesting phrases. One is that at the end she says, this is one of the Hebrews' children. What does that tell you? Right? This is one of the Hebrews' children. Right? What does that mean? Hebrews' children. What does that mean? Rick?
I always wondered how she knew it was a Hebrew child.
Oh, okay. Rick's doing a Peter on me. He's jumping ahead on me. Right? What does that tell you, though? Right? There's something distinctive. There's something noticeable. There's something different about who? What child? Who are these people? Close. Who are these people? Who are we? Huh? No? Who are we? Whose children are we? God's children. Right? These are God's children. We are God's children. Yes? Okay? What did she notice? Right? Who is... How is Egypt... What does Egypt often represent in the Bible? Right? Egypt often represents the world. Right? Egypt often represents the world in the Bible. Okay? So here you have a worldly princess picking up this child of God and saying what? This is different. This is noticeable. There's something distinctive about this. Right? So, flip that around to us, right? We are children of God. We happen to live in the world. We are not supposed to be of the world, right? Which means then that what? When they see us, what are they supposed to know? We're different. We're Christians. We're children of God. Right? What happens if she picks up this kid and goes, oh, why is there another Egyptian baby out here? Right? What happens if the world sees us and interacts with us the same way they would anybody else out in the world? Say it again. Then we have no testimony. That's right, Mark. Then we have no testimony. What are we supposed to have? We are supposed to have a testimony. We are supposed to be different. We are supposed to be noticeable. Right? If you sit, how many of you people still sit out on your front porch and watch stuff go by? One old timer back there. Good job, Robert. Right? Darlene, remember back in the day when people used to do that? They used to sit on their porches when it was hot in summer and the cars go by and people go by. Hi, neighbor. Right? And all that. Those good days. Right? But when we watch people go by here, what do you notice? They go fast, right? They go fast. When you walk into a store, what do you see? We notice things, do we not? They dress different. They speak different. They act different. Their children behave different. Okay, well now flip it around though. What do they see when they look at you? Ideally, right? Bob, what happens when you walk into Walmart? Right? All the tank top, tattooed people turn, oh, it's Bob, right? Get him. Right? But there should be a difference. I mean, do we have to walk around with our Bibles tucked under our arms, with our usher name tag right there, right, in a suit and tie all the time? No. Right? But there's a difference in the way we speak. There's a difference in the way we act. There's a difference in where we go. Right? How many of you ever seen like those old West movies, you know, and, you know, the Spurs, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And you open the saloon doors, whoop. And everybody goes, whoa. Right? You know what I'm talking about. Right, it's exactly like that. Right? That's what we're supposed to be. Noticeable, different, right? That dude doesn't belong in this bar. Right? Where if we walk into a bar now, what happens? Right? Do they notice that you do not belong here? Right? Okay. Peter, I think you had your hand up? No? All right. Never mind then. All right. So, is it a coincidence then that Pharaoh's daughter found him? Right? No coincidences with God is what Peter says. Right? So, Pharaoh's daughter. Right? Pharaoh's daughter. Right? The offspring of the enemy himself. Right? Okay, because who's Pharaoh? King. King who gave what commandment? Kill them all, right? How? How were they supposed to be killed? Drowned in the river that she's standing at, that he's floating in. Right? All she's got to do is ark, Hebrew, push. Right? Or picks him up and goes, that's one of those Hebrew kids. Whoop. Right? But what does the Bible say happened? Compassion, right? Right? What's interesting about that? Chuck.
First thing I think about is God moves people.
God moves people, you're right.
Like moving the kings this way or that way.
Right? The heart of the king is in his hand, right? Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she knew what was right and wrong. You know what's interesting about this word compared to what happened in verse 3, right? And when she could no longer hide him. Why not? Because he made a noise. So, by who? Well, think about this, though. Where did they live? Where did the Israelites live? Huh? They lived in their own city. They lived in Goshen. They lived in their own settlements. So what's happening here in verse 3? Why could she no longer hide him? Oh, she didn't trust the people around her. Some of her own people were going to narc on her. Right? But yet, where does the compassion come from? The Egyptian princess. The daughter of the one who issued the command. Randy.
Women in compassion for children is kind of a really big thing.
Yeah, the compassion that's there. Right? But if we think about it, wouldn't you think the Israelites would band together to protect their own? But wait a minute, I lost mine, so guess what? You're losing yours too. I'm not going to be the only one. Right? How many times have we seen it to where the people of the world seem more compassionate than Christians do? Right? We have the Word of God. We have the Holy Spirit in us. But yet, many times, we see them outdo us. Oh, what's wrong with that picture? Right? Who's supposed to be the most compassionate? The Christians are, right? If we go through the Gospels, how many times do we see where Christ had compassion on somebody? But yet we're like, nope, nope, no, don't look. Can't see. Right? And we turn a blind eye to things. Wow, what does that say? Okay. So you can also flip it around to witnessing. Right? Those who we think will be the least receptive to the gospel end up being the ones who want it the most. Right? Bob's at Walmart, big tank top, tatted guy, right? Right? Hi, Bob. Pet, pet, pet. Right? And Bob's like, ah! But the ones that we seem to be most afraid of, those are the ones that God are working on. Right? Where if we just had a little bit of compassion, yes? How those things can turn around. All right? All right. So, who's at work behind the command that Pharaoh gave to pitch all the kids into the Nile? Who's at work there? Satan is, right? Who's at work when somebody says something that irritates you? Right? Or a stupid law gets passed, or somebody does something mean to you, or whatever, right? Who's at work behind that? It's Satan, right? And we got to realize that. Okay? It's funny how there's an interesting similarity between the command by Pharaoh to dump all the kids into the Nile to Herod at the birth of Christ when he was found to be mocked of the wise men, right? So what did he do? Yep, children 2 and under, kill them all, right? Just like this. But what ends up happening? Christ somehow survived. Moses somehow survived, right? Isaiah 41:10. I am thy God. I will help. Right? That's what's going on there. Exodus chapter 2, verses 6 through 9. 6 through 9. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. Right? So what's interesting is when Pharaoh's daughter, often like in the movies, you'll hear, with the ark or whatever, and Moses will be crying. And then like the Pharaoh's daughter will go, oh, what's that? And, oh, look, ark, baby, right? But that's not what happened. The baby doesn't cry until the cover comes off. How did she see it? Randy. Right now, it's covered in an ark. Boop. It's in a little brown eggshell. She could have seen her being put in the water? I wouldn't think so. Because then she would have got busted, and then they wouldn't have been surprised, because then they would have known exactly what it was. Ben?
God had Moses' mother put the baby in a strategic location where he would be found.
Yeah, we're put in a strategic position so that it would be found, right? Kind of hidden, but yet not so that the wrong people find it. Like, do you think Jochebed knew Pharaoh's daughter's bathing schedule? No, probably not, right? But yet, who's in control of all this, right? How many times have we prayed that something would be found, right? I remember one time, it was Thanksgiving, right? Where my dad lost his medication, or is it Christmas? Is it one of those holidays, right? Christmas. And my dad suffers from some dementia, right? So he doesn't always remember where he puts things, which is not good, especially when it's your medication, right? So we found out he lost his medication, and we're looking all over the place for this stuff, right? And garbage, and it was Christmas because we had to go through all the gift wrapping. Right, because we thought it might have fallen there and whatever, and we don't know where this thing went, right? We had to go down to the dumpster because we threw the garbage out, and it's a whole big mess, right? We can't find it. So we got the order mixed up, and what we did then is then we prayed. Then we prayed, right? Soon as we get done praying, the first place my brother looks, it's there, right? Who's in control of all this? Who opens the eyes? Right, Peter?
Lesson I learned many years ago, yes, God can open your eyes. And I go around a lot of the used bookstores, and I donate books and give them to people, stuff, and find them cheap. When I walk in, I pray, God, direct my eyes. You start looking at a shelf of books.
Yeah.
Blended together.
Yeah, it's books. Yep.
God
Moving on.
is this thing, it's right there.
Yeah.
And I taught other younger Christians the same thing too. Again, a lot of times we look at our own strength first.
Yep.
Instead of praying first. Go through a lot of grief we wouldn't have to.
I know, right? Why are we so slow to learn that lesson? Just pray first, then, right? Let God do the work. He says he'll help. He says he'll strengthen. He says he'll uphold. Are you asking him to do it? No. Okay, well then I'll just wait for you to get tired and then ask me, right? Okay. Let's see. So instead of tossing, there was something else I was going to say. Oh, yeah.
I'd ask God for the answer.
Yeah. You mean the one who knows everything, Peter? Why don't we ask, right? Chuck.
That's an answer.
Yeah.
He's in control.
Oh, yeah.
And you can have great confidence he's doing things that are good.
Yeah, you can. You can have that
It
confidence.
seems hard.
Right? Well, you think about Moses, right? And that whole ordeal that Jochebed's going through and how God is working things out. She even gets her son back for more time than what she originally thought. Right? So even in that, there's a blessing that's there. All right. So instead of tossing him into the river, Pharaoh's daughter saves the child alive, right? Yay! Nobody else cared? Moses is alive. Yay! All right, well, there you go. I guess we'll take that. So, Acts chapter 7, verse 20. What do you think about that emotional swing that Jochebed had to be on that day? Has to drop her kid off in the river. Miriam comes running in. They found him. They want you to raise him for a little while. What? All right. Acts chapter 7, verse 20 through 22. In which time Moses was born, we knew that, and was exceeding fair and nourished up in his father's house 3 months. And when he was cast out, Pharaoh's daughter took him up and nourished him for her own son. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and in deeds. All right. So according to verse 21, he gets picked up by Pharaoh's daughter. Once he gets weaned and then he gets transferred over to Pharaoh, he's then nourished in Pharaoh's household. He's learned in wisdom and is mighty in words and deeds, which is an interesting phrase that will come into play next week when we talk about the calling of Moses, because one of his arguments is that I'm slow of speech. Well, wait a minute. It says right here, mighty in words. So we'll just remember that for later. So, what do you think of the irony of Moses growing up, being trained, and educated in Pharaoh's household? Because think about this living arrangement. Moses is living and being raised by the man that enslaves his people, that killed all of the people that were the same age as him. So when he walks out through Israel, the only people his age are girls. Right? All the boys are dead. You're not living with the guy who did that. Pharaoh, on the other hand, is now living with and raising one of the people he was trying to suppress and destroy. How do you think those family dynamics went? Right? What does Isaiah 41:10 tell us? Right? Fear not. Right? I will help. I will strengthen. I will uphold. Right? And then we can translate that, though, into the family drama and situations that we have to deal with. Right? Because there aren't families in here that don't have drama. Right? There aren't families in here that have, that one singular problem child, right? Because it's only one. Right? All families have issues. All families have quirks, right? All families have stuff they have to deal with, burdens they have to carry, family baggage, right? But who helps with that? Okay, so now, if we look at Moses, how bad is your family situation compared to Moses? Right? One of the things that the world will have, well, I had a rough childhood. Try being Moses. Right? Well, my parent killed my people. Right? Randy?
Clear and simple. What happened here in my life is a little more confusing. Not so clear as that.
It's not so clear as that. Do you think Moses knew that, though? Right. So as he's growing up, though, and he starts to think, why am I different than everybody else? Right? Why am I being treated different? Think about this, right? When we go back to the compassion, right, and Jochebed hid Moses 3 months because she's worried about the people around her saying and pointing him out. Right? So he's got arrows pointing at him from his own kind. Do you think being raised in the Pharaoh's household protected him from comments? Right? Egyptian social media, right? All that and the things there? No. No. They knew who he was. He's a Hebrew. Yes. He's hated by both sides. Right? And you see that later on when he tries to help out the Hebrews, he's like, well, who made you a judge? You know? And then once Pharaoh finds out, nope, I just raised you for 40 years. Guess what? I'm going to kill you now. I knew I shouldn't have had you in my house. Right? That's the dynamics that's going on there. But if you take it in Isaiah 41:10, and I am thy God, I will help thee, I will strengthen thee, and all that, what is happening in Moses' life? What is he being trained for? Right? Why was Moses not killed? Why was Moses placed where he was in the river? Why was Moses found by Pharaoh's daughter and not somebody else? Why was Moses nourished and trained and taken care of for 40 years in Pharaoh's household? Why did he have all that family drama that he had? What's coming? Right, Sandy. So he could be prepared to lead God's people out of Egypt. Right? Because think about this. Moses has been hated all his life. And then he gets to be leader in Israel, taking him out the Exodus, right? Did they like him? No. They murmured and complained constantly. Right? But who has been specifically trained to deal with people whispering behind his back his entire life? Who was more prepared? Right? Moses was. Peter.
I would say, in addition, 40 years taking care of sheep, God taught him many things.
Oh, yeah.
And not the worldly way of leadership.
That's right. The difference between the Egyptian world training and, okay, God fixing that stuff.
But owning nothing and doing it for his father.
Yeah. That's quite a status change. Yeah, that's quite a status change from being in Pharaoh's household. I can get whatever I want, and now I'm working for my father-in-law. Right? Yeah, you're right. He doesn't act on the emotions like we've seen other leaders do. Right? That's good. Right? He actually goes the other way when God tries to act emotionally, right? Moses steps in and is like, no, I'm sorry. We'll take care of it. We'll fix it. Don't spare them. Right? Shirley, go ahead.
When Pharaoh saw Moses, maybe the first time, thinking he's got to be Hebrew. What is
Yeah? Why did you bring that thing home? Right? That's not a puppy. Why are you bringing this home? Right?
Why, it had to be God, because why did Pharaoh let him, stay in the household, grow up? What was his thoughts all the time?
The traditional thinking behind what Pharaoh thought at that time is that he did not have a son to carry on the line. He only had the daughter. And then through the daughter and the adopted son, maybe he was thinking that Moses would then. But that's a weird dynamic in and of itself, too. So I don't know. Yeah. And then puts up with that for 40 years. Oh, yeah. Dads will do dumb things for daughters, right? Right, Rick? Literally, right, Bob? His little princess.
When he was growing up, when did he realize that,
I don't know. It does. The Bible does not say when Moses realized. At 40 years old, when he sees the Egyptians smiting his brethren, he knows it then. So at some point, there had to be some heritage training. I don't know what else to call it, I can tell I'm not the same. I'm not treated the same. Why am I not the same? What's different? He knows about God, because in Acts 7:25, right? And seeing one of them suffer wrong, this is actually 24, he defended him and avenged him that was oppressed and smote the Egyptian. For he supposed, Moses, his brethren, so he knows they're his brethren, would have understood how that God by his hand would deliver them, but they understood not. So he has a knowledge that those are my people. The Egyptian gods are not my God. Right? And somehow has a relationship with God, and that this plan is that we're coming out of here at some point. Now, we know he took matters into his own hands, and that's the way we often do things, and we try and get ahead of God's plan, and it's like, oh, it's happening now, and then we make mistakes. How much do you think a 2-year-old remembers? It does depend on the 2-year-old. But, well, that's an interesting point, though. If you think about it, how important those early training years are. Train up a child in the way you should go. But even that little bit that you can dump in, that you don't know that they're understanding, they understand way more. But to count on that for the next 40, 38 years? All right, Sandy, and then we got to cut us off.
Someone adopts a child, they don't tell them that they're adopted. A lot of times that child will find that stuff out when they're old enough to go to school.
Sure.
And other kids make fun of them, other kids tell them things, and then they start putting pieces together.
Yeah. There's all sorts of pieces there that we you wish you kind of knew a little bit more. How did this all work? All right, and with that, though, we are 1 minute over time, so we are going to have to be dismissed.
Here's an answer.
No. Randy's face is like, nuts. There's no answer. All right, you guys are dismissed.